Scientists are playing God with DNA from creatures that died 4,000 years ago, and the consequences could reshape our planet forever. The woolly mammoth, that massive Ice Age giant with tusks longer than a car, is the target of the most ambitious resurrection project in human history. Using genetic engineering that sounds like science fiction, researchers are splicing mammoth genes into Asian elephant DNA, creating a hybrid that has never existed before. But here's what they're not telling you about this multi-million-dollar experiment that could either save the Arctic or destroy it completely if it succeeds at all. To understand why this project matters, we need to go back to when these giants ruled a frozen world that no longer exists. What made these massive creatures thrive in conditions that would kill most animals within hours? The answer lies in a collection of evolutionary adaptations so sophisticated that woolly mammoths became the undisputed masters of Ice Age survival across the northern hemisphere steppes. The mammoth's coat was an engineering marvel consisting of two distinct hair layers working in perfect harmony. The outer guard hairs stretched up to 3 feet in length, creating a protective barrier against wind and moisture. Beneath this outer shield, a dense undercoat of shorter, finer hairs trapped warm air close to the skin, forming an insulation system so effective that mammoths could maintain body heat in temperatures that plunged far below freezing. This dual-layered defense allowed them to graze comfortably, while other animals sought shelter from the brutal cold. Their massive curved tusks served as multi-purpose survival tools rather than mere displays of dominance. These ivory structures functioned as snow plows, allowing mammoths to clear frozen ground and access buried vegetation during the harshest winter months. They also worked as icebreakers, cracking through frozen water sources when liquid water became scarce. When confronted by predators like cave lions, these tusks transformed into formidable weapons capable of delivering devastating defensive strikes. Mammoth social behavior revolved around complex matriarchal groups that provided crucial protection during the most dangerous periods of the year. These family units coordinated massive migrations across the steppes, moving together to find fresh grazing grounds and avoid the worst weather conditions. During calving season and harsh winters, the herd structure became even more critical, with experienced females guiding younger members through survival strategies passed down through generations. The mammoth's internal adaptations were equally remarkable. Their blood chemistry was specially adapted to cold environments, allowing circulation to continue even when external temperatures dropped to life-threatening levels. Thick layers of fat deposits surrounded vital organs, creating internal insulation that maintained core body temperature when the external environment became hostile to survival. Their grinding teeth represented another crucial adaptation to their harsh environment. These massive molars could process the tough grasses and sedges that dominated the steppe landscape, extracting maximum nutrition from vegetation that other herbivores could not efficiently digest. The teeth featured numerous enamel ridges that created extensive surface areas for grinding, while their replacement system ensured that worn teeth were continuously renewed throughout the animal's lifetime. These remarkable adaptations created creatures perfectly suited to their frozen world. The mammoth's specialized coat tusks, social behaviors, cold adapted physiology, and grinding teeth made it incredibly successful in environments where most species could not survive. However, this extreme specialization would eventually become their greatest vulnerability. The very features that allowed them to dominate the Ice Age steppes would prove inadequate when their perfectly adapted world began to transform around them, creating conditions that would challenge even these masters of survival. Why do scientists still debate whether climate change or human hunting delivered the final blow to mammoth populations? The extinction puzzle has divided paleontologists for decades, because the evidence points to a complex interaction between environmental catastrophe and human expansion that occurred simultaneously across the Northern Hemisphere. The rapid climate warming at the end of the Pleistocene transformed the mammoth's world within mere centuries. The cold, dry grassland steppes that had supported these giants for thousands of years gave way to warmer, wetter conditions that fundamentally altered the landscape. Forests and wetlands replaced the open grasslands, creating an environment that no longer supported the vegetation mammoths depended on for survival. The mammoth's specialized diet became its downfall as cold-adapted grasses disappeared from the changing landscape. Trees and shrubs replaced the nutritious sedges and grasses that mammoth teeth were designed to process efficiently. These new plant species contained different fiber structures and chemical compositions that mammoth digestive systems could not handle, effectively leading to malnutrition even when food appeared abundant. Archaeological evidence reveals that humans developed sophisticated hunting techniques specifically targeting mammoths during this same period. Mammoth bone structures found at ancient settlements show that entire communities relied on these massive animals for shelter construction, with rib bones forming the framework for dwellings and tusks serving as structural supports. The hunting methods involved coordinated group tactics that could bring down even healthy adults. The synergistic effect created conditions where climate stress weakened mammoth herds, making them more vulnerable to human predation and habitat fragmentation. Stressed populations became easier targets for human hunters, while human activities further divided already shrinking habitats into isolated patches that could not support large herds. Genomic evidence from mammoth remains shows population bottlenecks and reduced genetic diversity in the final populations before extinction. The genetic data reveal that mammoth communities were already struggling with limited breeding options and increased susceptibility to disease long before their final disappearance from most regions. Island populations on places like Wrangel Island managed to survive until approximately 4,000 years ago by avoiding significant human contact. These isolated mammoth communities demonstrate that human hunting pressure played a crucial role in mainland extinctions, since populations without human interference lasted thousands of years longer. The mammoth extinction reveals how multiple pressures create cascading ecological collapse, providing crucial lessons for modern conservation efforts. Today's scientists are attempting to reverse this ancient extinction through cutting-edge genetic engineering techniques. The science behind this resurrection attempt relies on cutting-edge genetic engineering techniques that push the boundaries of what's possible with current technology. How do you bring back a species that's been extinct for thousands of years using the DNA of its closest living relative? Colossal Biosciences has embarked on an ambitious genetic engineering project to create mammoth elephant hybrids through precise DNA manipulation, attempting to resurrect creatures that vanished millennia ago. Their approach centers on transforming Asian elephants into cold-resistant giants that closely resemble their extinct mammoth cousins. The genetic foundation for this project rests on the remarkable 99% genetic similarity between Asian elephants and woolly mammoths. This near-identical DNA relationship makes the species natural candidates for hybrid creation. However, that seemingly tiny 1% difference represents millions of crucial genetic variations that controlled every mammoth-specific trait, from their shaggy coats to their curved tusks. These genetic differences created the distinct adaptations that allowed mammoths to survive in frozen environments where elephants would perish. The genome editing process relies on CRISPR technology, which functions as genetic scissors that cut and insert specific mammoth DNA sequences into elephant chromosomes. Scientists target multiple genes responsible for cold adaptation, including those controlling shaggy hair growth, fat distribution patterns, and hemoglobin modifications that prevent blood from freezing. The precision required for these edits demands advanced sequencing technologies to verify that each genetic modification occurs exactly as intended without damaging surrounding DNA. The nuclear transfer technique follows this genetic editing phase. Scientists harvest eggs from healthy female Asian elephants, then remove the elephant nucleus and replace it with the edited mammoth-elephant hybrid nucleus. These reconstructed eggs develop into early embryos that are implanted into surrogate elephant mothers who carry the hybrid offspring through the lengthy gestation period. Technical challenges multiply when identifying which specific genes control mammoth traits like curved tusks, compact ears, and cold-resistant blood chemistry. Scientists must map these characteristics to precise genetic sequences while ensuring that multiple simultaneous edits do not create unintended mutations or damage essential cellular functions. The process requires careful cultivation and maintenance of cell lines that remain viable throughout the editing procedures. Timeline challenges add another layer of complexity to the entire operation. Elephant gestation lasts 22 months, meaning each experimental attempt requires nearly 2 years before scientists can evaluate success or failure. Sexual maturity does not occur until elephants reach 10 to 15 years of age, extending the timeline for determining whether hybrid offspring can reproduce and establish viable populations. Colossal Biosciences has demonstrated concrete progress by creating genetically modified mice with woolly hair traits, proving that genetic modifications can produce cold tolerance characteristics in living animals. Their researchers disrupted 9 genes linked to hair color, texture length, and pattern-producing fur similar to mammoth coats in laboratory mice. This breakthrough provides tangible evidence that the genetic engineering approach can work. The genetic blueprint for mammoth revival exists within current scientific capabilities, but the technical execution reveals layers of complexity that push the boundaries of genetic engineering. Yet even if scientists successfully create these hybrid creatures, the challenges are far from over. The most immediate concerns arise from the welfare implications for the Asian elephant mothers who would carry these experimental creatures. What happens to endangered Asian elephants forced to serve as surrogate mothers? And how would newborn hybrids survive without their own species? The profound animal welfare concerns surrounding the use of these already vulnerable animals as surrogates reveal disturbing ethical dimensions that researchers have yet to adequately address. Elephant pregnancies involve complex social support systems where entire herds participate in births and calf rearing processes. Female elephants form protective circles around laboring mothers, providing physical support and emotional comfort during the lengthy birthing process. These social networks continue after birth, with multiple females helping to raise, protect, and teach newborn calves essential survival skills. The communal nature of elephant reproduction makes laboratory isolation particularly traumatic for surrogate mothers. Surrogate mothers face significant risks from carrying genetically modified embryos that their bodies may recognize as foreign. The stress of repeated invasive procedures, including egg harvesting, embryo implantation, and continuous medical monitoring, creates sustained psychological pressure on animals already facing extinction in the wild. Historical cloning attempts demonstrate these risks clearly. The Bucado De-Extinction project required 782 eggs to produce just one birth, and that single offspring died within minutes due to lung defects. Such failure rates suggest that a mammoth revival would subject numerous elephant surrogates to repeated unsuccessful procedures. The social rejection problem presents perhaps the most serious welfare concern. Elephant herds might abandon or attack mammoth hybrid calves that look, smell, or behave differently from normal elephant offspring. The distinct mammoth characteristics programmed into these hybrids, including different hair patterns, ear shapes, and potentially altered vocalizations, could mark them as outsiders within their adoptive elephant families. Rejected calves would face psychological trauma from isolation and potential physical harm from confused herd members. Mammoth hybrids would face a learning crisis without mammoth mothers to teach essential survival behaviors and social structures. Elephants acquire complex knowledge through decades of maternal instruction, including foraging techniques, migration routes, and social hierarchies. Hybrid offspring would lack access to mammoth-specific behaviors needed for Arctic survival, while potentially being unable to fully integrate elephant social patterns due to their genetic modifications. Laboratory environments create additional psychological trauma for both surrogate mothers and hybrid offspring. Elephants require extensive social interaction, varied environments, and freedom of movement that captive facilities cannot adequately provide. The artificial conditions necessary for genetic experimentation deny these highly intelligent animals the rich social and environmental experiences essential for psychological well-being. The ethical paradox becomes clear when considering that endangered Asian elephants are being used to create experimental hybrids, while wild elephant populations continue declining rapidly. Conservation experts argue that resources devoted to mammoth resurrection could instead support elephant conservation efforts that might prevent another extinction crisis from unfolding. Long-term care requirements for mammoth hybrids include specialized diets adapted for Arctic vegetation, climate-controlled environments that maintain freezing temperatures, and social enrichment designed for creatures that belong to no existing species. These hybrid animals would require lifetime care in artificial environments, unable to live naturally in either elephant habitats or Arctic conditions. The welfare concerns demonstrate how de-extinction projects risk creating new forms of animal suffering while attempting to reverse past losses. Yet proponents argue these ethical costs might be justified if mammoth hybrids could address a much larger crisis threatening the entire planet. Could releasing mammoth hybrids into the modern Arctic actually help fight climate change, or would it create an ecological disaster? The controversial climate argument suggests that mammoth hybrids could help stabilize permafrost and reduce methane emissions through ecosystem engineering on a massive scale. The theory proposes that mammoth trampling and grazing could convert tundra back to grassland, fundamentally altering Arctic soil composition and temperature regulation. Heavy mammoth footsteps would compact snow during the winter months, reducing its insulating properties and allowing deeper ground freezing. This increased soil penetration by cold temperatures could slow the thawing process that releases stored carbon from permafrost layers. The permafrost stabilization hypothesis centers on large herbivores reducing ground temperatures through their physical activities. Mammoth grazing would remove insulating vegetation layers, exposing soil directly to freezing air temperatures. Their constant movement across the landscape would break up moss and shrub cover that currently traps warm air close to the ground. These combined effects could theoretically slow the thawing process that releases greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. The scale problem reveals the fundamental weakness in this climate solution. Current Arctic ecosystems span millions of square kilometers across Alaska, Siberia, and northern Canada. Proposed mammoth populations would number in the thousands, at most creating impossibly small population densities to achieve meaningful ecosystem-wide changes. Each individual mammoth would need to influence hundreds of square kilometers to make any measurable impact. Unintended consequences include potential disruption of existing Arctic wildlife that have adapted to current tundra conditions. Caribou migration routes could be altered by mammoth herds occupying traditional grazing areas. Polar bears might face additional competition for territory as mammoth activities change snow and ice patterns. Migratory birds that depend on specific tundra vegetation could lose essential nesting and feeding habitats. The habitat mismatch presents another serious challenge. Modern Arctic conditions differ dramatically from Ice Age steppe environments that supported original mammoths. Current precipitation patterns, seasonal temperature variations, and vegetation communities bear little resemblance to the grassland steppes where mammoths originally thrived. Expert skepticism about climate benefits focuses on whether ecosystem engineering effects could operate at meaningful scales. The time factor creates additional problems with climate action needed within decades, while mammoth populations would require centuries to establish viable numbers. The climate change argument for mammoth revival remains highly speculative, with potential ecological risks that could outweigh uncertain benefits. These ambitious projects raise questions about resource allocation while current species disappear. The Mammoth Revival Project sparks a major debate. Does de-extinction represent genuine conservation, or does it simply create new ethical problems while diverting vital resources from immediate preservation efforts for existing threatened species like elephants and rhinos? Leading scientists warned that this focus risks replacing effective proven conservation methods. The woolly mammoth story ultimately reminds us that extinction is more than losing a single species. It means unraveling the complex ecological relationships that sustain entire biological communities.